Hello, happy Thursday. Welcome to another live event where we talk about the MBA application journey. I know some of you are still finalizing all those round one applications, of course, depending on the schools that you're targeting. And some of you are also working through your test prep for your round two applications and even applications themselves. So I'm really excited to talk about the goals, because that is at least how we approach things at SIA, a foundational element of your application. It does really dictate everything else that you do in terms of, putting together a cohesive story for the MBA. I have two screens, one of which has my presentation and also the camera, and the other one has the Q&A space, so I can see questions coming in. I do invite you to engage with me in this conversation. So write your questions in whichever platform you're joining us from. We won't share your name on the screen, so don't worry about that. We just want to make sure that we're able to answer as many questions as possible, obviously to be of support to our community. I have quite a few slides today, so just bear with me as we go through each of the steps. Obviously, I was ambitious in terms of deciding that it's going to be 7 tips. Therefore, we had to talk about 7 tips on this session. If you are going through this process and realize that you may need some support, definitely invite you to reach out to schedule a consultation with me to see how we can support your applications. And if you are in the interview preparation process, we can also discuss that. So reach out to discuss how we can support you through your MBA application. So let's now dive into the presentation. And again, I invite you to ask your questions in whichever platform you're joining us from, so that I can, answer the questions live. Excellent. So for those of you who do not know me, I am the founder of SIA Admissions. We here focus on helping applicants tell their story in an authentic way to business schools. This means a very personalized one-on-one coaching style that we apply here. And our goal is to really help applicants be authentic to who they are, but also take into account what business schools are looking for in order to put together a really strong MBA application, reflective of your true capabilities, your true character, and obviously differentiate yourself from the next person who has a very similar profile to you. Today, as I mentioned, we're going to talk about the MBA goals. It is a process that's not typically easy unless you know what you want to do. It takes a little bit of time to actually put together. So I'm just going to grab a little bit of water. So we're going to go through the importance of why are MBA goals really important. I know some of you come in from the US education system and have gone through the college application process, which was using the Common App. You didn't have to declare any kind of major, any kind of aspiration. You were still going through the process of discovery. When you go through graduate school, that changes. Graduate school is not quote unquote mandatory. It's actually a choice that you make, and you have to go in with a purpose as to why you're doing it, right? We're going to talk about why is it important, and then what constitutes strong goals. We dive into the 7 tips, and then of course the Q&A is at the end. But like I mentioned, if you are, if you have questions, please ask along during our session. All right, so why are goals important in the MBA application? So goals really allow you to demonstrate clarity and focus. You are a professional who is looking to grow in your career, whether that's to pivot careers, to grow within your own same sector, which you're currently doing, or changing entirely geographies and everything else. The goals, you're going on this journey, and you then want to be able to clarify and demonstrate that you have a focus. You're not in that discovery phase in your life at this point. It shows that you have a strategic mind. You're thinking purposefully. You're making purposeful decision into getting to where you want to go. And it also indicates a commitment and motivation, especially if you are able to really capture your goals in an effective and an authentic way. It can really be a change maker in terms of how your story is being viewed from the admission team. And then, of course, all of these components help the admission team assess fit. If your goals are focused around something that the school can't offer, this is a really good time for them to assess, are they going to be able to help you? They're not necessarily judging you as a person, but they're judging their ability to support your vision and your aspirations. So it's really important to be, one, authentic to you, but also recognize that business school has limitations also in terms of how much they can support a candidate through the process and through their goals. So what makes for strong goals? Strong goals are clear and specific. They are realistic and achievable, but also ambitious. I sometimes hear applicants talk about how, you don't need to, or one of the common things that I hear is that you don't need to be very specific in your goals. I tend to disagree with that. I actually think you need as specific as possible, because you personally need to go through that journey of identifying even how you can craft goals in an effective way. And if you are vague yourself, it means that you may probably not fully understand the scope of what you need to do to get to where you want to go. And therefore, if you are vague yourself, that also means it's going to show up not only in your writing, in your application, but also in your interview. So clarity, specificity, it's really important. And then realistic. If you are someone who is not understanding the market and understanding the possibility of getting to where you want to go, that can be a red flag for the admission team. And this is not to say that you don't know any other person who has done this, right? There are plenty of people who have paved new paths that are very uncommon, but admission team does not bet on uncommon. They bet on the common. So it's really important that you are in this process, you recognize what's realistic and what is not realistic, to crafting these goals. They also have to be logical in terms of their connection to you personally. When the admission team looks at your application and looks at your resume, can they see a clear connection between the decisions that you've made along the way? Now, sometimes this means there is, you were working in one field and now you're changing entirely to something different, and that's okay, but they do need to see some transferable skills in the rest of your application to showcase how this new pathway that you're carving out for yourself is actually one that you are really committed to and going to do what it takes essentially to get there. And then, of course, I have found that the strongest applications are the ones who are purpose-driven, who have goals that are purpose-driven, and that they're authentic. So business schools have more applicants than there are seats in the program. And the ones that stand out from an admission perspective is the ones who are really, one, having a purpose as to what they're doing and why they want to do it, the impact they want to make. And then they're authentic to them and their own experiences, which sometimes requires you to be vulnerable. And that is part of this process, right? It's kind of balancing the vulnerabilities of your own experiences with the looking at them as an opportunity for you to be a change maker and have that purpose that drives you to get to where you want to go. So let's talk about tips now. So the first part in the process of defining goals should be really that self-reflection. Um, you want to reflect on what your journey has been so far, what your career has been, what are some of your values that you hold dear, what are your strengths, and what are your passions. These are really important identifiers, because especially for those applicants who have a hard time figuring out what it is, or they're still in that I'm not exactly sure what I want to do phase, this can help you really make come up with a goal that resonates with you, even if you're not sure that you're ready to carve it in stone yet. It can be a really good starting point, and then as you progress and as you have experiences, you know how to write a goal, and you know how to move forward in the direction that you want. Some questions that you should be asking yourself in this process are: what challenges excite me? This is really important because it allows you to identify areas that you are passionate about, that if you could do it all day, every day, without even worrying about getting paid for it, that's kind of the thing that you want to identify, because that's typically your passions, right? What impact is another question that you want to ask, is what kind of impact do I want to have? And this is really important, because I would like my community here to think about goals not from the perspective of how much money I can make. And I know I recognize that, obviously that makes the world move, right? Money makes the world move. But the idea here is that you can make money in any area, so long as you're passionate and you are willing to put in the work in that area, right? So what is the area, what is the sector, what is the problem that you see that you want to be a part of the solution, a part of the change, like a change maker in that particular area? Now, it doesn't need to be an entire sector that you want to change. It can be something in terms of, like, I noticed these kinds of behaviors in the corporate world that I want to change. I want to be the kind of leader that brings about this kind of change, because it will affect how people work, how organizations grow, and so on and so forth, right? So it can be more personal. It doesn't need to be, or more like a leadership kind of impact, but it does impact the other people as well, and also obviously impact the organizations and their growth too. But obviously, if you want to, change an entire sector, that's welcome as well, so long as it's a realistic goal, of course. So your goal in terms of the self-reflection is to identify a problem beyond the job title, right? So it's not about, I want to be a CEO, I want to be a CSO, I want to be any one of those titles. It's really about the problem that you're looking to solve, and that's your why. And that's where you want to get with your self-reflection. Now, tip number 2 is, then you have to, once you identify what the problem is, then you have to identify gaps, right? You need to identify what are the skills, knowledge in terms of what exposures have you had and experiences that you lack. That typically starts with what you know in terms of what skills you have in relation to where you want to go. But then the idea is that you need to also understand what are the skills that are needed for that career, and then where is that gap that you have. This can be both technical skills and soft skills, leadership skills, and those kinds of elements that you need to develop. I would say just be mindful to not talk too much about learning programming and learning these kinds of very, very technical skills, unless you're doing a dual degree, and that's a different conversation. But typically you have to consider that this is an MBA. And if you are at this point, maybe then this is a good question to ask. Do you really need a specialized degree, or do you need an MBA in terms of where you want to go? This can help you. This process can help you make that clarification, because obviously if you are going in the wrong degree, if you are choosing the wrong degree, then you are obviously wasting money in the process. So the goal for identifying career gaps is really for you to identify the skills that you need in order to get to your long-term plan. Does it mean that all those skills will be filled by an MBA? It just means that you know what is lacking that needs addressing. And then you're going to map out the rest. And we'll go through tip number 3. Once you have, okay, what are the skills that I know? What do I need? And now it's time to look at, okay, how can you get, with the help of an MBA, how can you get some of those skills? Which means, what is the role that I want to have post MBA that will enable me to get those skills that I need? This will help you really bridge the gap between where you are now and how, with an MBA, you can get to the next step. Sometimes this means I need a lot more exposure on how different companies work, which means something like that. The logical short-term goal is consulting, because you get to obviously see how other companies struggle through the areas that you need to develop, and this way helps you develop the best practices. Your goal in terms of defining your short-term goals is to articulate specific but realistic goals that also consider a sector and function in terms of how you get to your why, your purpose, in terms of the kind of change that you want to make long term. From here, let's dive into tip number 4. So you can go with, then here, once you know, okay, what's your short-term goal, you can then define what's the next step. So once I get, let's say, consulting, 2 to 5 years of consulting experience, what is the next step that I need, next role that I need to have in order to get to my, long-term plan? So to my why, right? To my mission. This is 5 to 10 years post MBA. When you think about what business schools are looking for, that's the time frame that they understand the long-term goal to be. They're not looking at when you're 50, 60 years old. They're really looking between that 5 to 10 year post MBA time frame. And then, of course, you need to look at, how does this 5 to 10 year from post MBA, how does it align with your personal why, right? How is it moving you closer to getting to solve the problem that you set out to solve? This means you want to be ambitious, but also grounded in what is possible in your area of interest. So let's say you want to work in tech, and you want to be a CEO in a tech company. It's not really realistic for you to say to business school, no matter how great your profile looks, that you're going to be the CEO of Apple. You're going to be the CEO of Google. Those, I'm sure, as you're watching this, you're smiling, because you recognize how unrealistic that is. So what is that 10-year plan that is ambitious? You still get to make an impact, but that is realistic in your capabilities in getting there, right? With of course, an MBA and the short post MBA career goal. With those experiences, what is realistic for you to go into your long-term plan? Now that you have a path, you have a plan as to where you want to go, now it's time to look at, okay, so how do you align your goals with an MBA? This is where your research comes in. And that's why I said earlier that your goals are really important and are the starting point. And that's why we really start here at SIA in our process. We start with identifying your goals before we even select schools, because you don't know what you need until you know where you're heading, right? So once you know what you need and where you're heading, now it's time to conduct your research. Research MBA programs that will enable you to get the skills that you need to bridge that gap, right? You know what you're lacking, you know where you need to go, where are the schools that offer those specific skills that you need, the specific exposures, the experiences that you're looking to have in order to get there. If you are looking to work in the healthcare sector, for example, well, then you should be really looking at business schools that have a robust healthcare curriculum, community, so that it can help you make those pivots. In the energy, the same kind of thing, right? What are those opportunities in terms of that ability to align your goals with the MBA offerings? Here, the goal of this step is to be able to highlight how specifically the business school that you have chosen, will help you get to your short and long-term goals. Specificity is key, because that's where your authenticity can show up in terms of why it is that you need the skills, the opportunities that the schools offer. Then you also need to be looking at the how flexible and how realistic is the path. For example, if you are pitching that you want to be a consultant, and we know that consulting, and honestly, like, it could be any kind of job that you're pursuing, there is a chance that you don't get that job post MBA. What is an alternative path that still helps you get to where you want to go, to get to your why, right? What is it that helps you still get the skills that you need and the exposures that you need? It's your second choice, essentially, career path that is short-term, that still helps you get to that long-term plan. And how does it align, obviously, with that why in terms of where you want to go? The goal in this alternative path is to recognize that there are alternative paths to getting to where you want to go. If there are not alternative paths, then this could be a red flag in and of itself, a reminder that you may need to relook and re-examine your goals, because there's always multiple paths to getting to where you want to go. You just have to choose which one makes the most sense, and the easiest path, of course, to getting there. The less barriers to entry, the more accessible it's going to be for you post MBA. And finally, you have to then put this all together in a cohesive story that makes sense for the admission team. So you're going to connect your past experiences with your future aspirations, right? I mentioned earlier that your goals shouldn't be, a goal. I didn't say these words specifically, but I say these often enough. Your goals shouldn't be something you pitch as as it sounds like you just picked a goal out of a hat, right? It does need to be grounded on your personal experiences. At least those are the ones that really make for a strong story. And it needs to be logically linked to your short and long-term goals to show that genuine reason for pursuing an MBA. It is also a test for you in terms of your ability to showcase that an MBA is even worth it for you and where you want to go, right? And the idea here is that you're telling that compelling and cohesive story that gets the admission team, the admission committee team, who's reading your application, to buy into your story, to want to invest in you, to want to give you the opportunity to attend that institution. And obviously, we all, if you look at our entire human history, we love stories. We want to participate in stories. We want to participate in something that is beyond the individual. And your why is that for the admission team. They want to really support individuals who have a purpose for doing the things that they want to do. So hopefully this was helpful through this process. Again, if you want, through your goals development, if you want to discuss how we can support and how we go about our process in terms of helping you, helping applicants with goals, I invite you to reach out. I'm going to stop sharing screens and then move things around so I can easily read the questions. So if you give me just a moment to do that. And let's move you over here. Excellent. All right, so let's, we had some questions come in through the registration form. So we can start with those. How can I effectively highlight my my product management role as a post MBA goal, where most schools have a strong consulting tech marketing network? I think so. Typically, consulting is, of course, it's consulting. But if you are going into the tech space, typically that pivot is usually a product manager kind of role. So I would look at what those opportunities are, and you can be a product marketer if that's if that's what you're looking for. But if you want to be a product manager, you just really need to highlight essentially how this role is going to help you get to your long-term why, and what kinds of product manager opportunities are you interested in. So this may mean that you need to do a little bit more research in terms of what those roles look like, and what kind of company would you be working at in terms of having the ability to do this. Typically the network, unless you are if you're applying to US schools and are looking for companies that don't have US offices, which you shouldn't be doing, you should be applying to schools where your desired organization has offices where you can actually work. I would say there will be a network for you to tap into. Again, I don't know what kind of school ranked you are looking at. We typically focus here at top 20. So within the top 20, you should be able to find a network in the product management role. Maybe the network that you are looking for specifically within a sector. And that is a different conversation in terms of, if you have a sector that the school does not have access to or doesn't have a robust network in, then you have to really be more selective in terms of which schools you're saying, I'm going to apply here or not, right? Because as I mentioned earlier, if there is a sector that the school does not have access or does not have a robust network in, then it's not going to be in your best interest to apply there. You should be focusing on the schools that do have those opportunities. And again, you're not going to see, 70% of students going into the healthcare sector, because that's just not realistic, right? Most of the candidates go into consulting, tech, and financial services. So those are the three sectors that make up most of the class. But you can look at those other sectors that students go into post-MBA and then have conversations to recognize what those opportunities look like on the ground. Excellent. Next question. Can I have more than one short-term or long-term goal? No. You cannot have more than one long-term goal. You can have an alternative short-term goal that still leads you to the long-term goal, but it cannot be two different ones, right? And I would only use the alternative goal when you are asked to present your alternative plan. It's not something that you volunteer off the bat. All right, last question. How can I use my MBA goals to differentiate myself from other applicants with similar backgrounds? This is an excellent question. I would say that authenticity, that reflection, is really necessary to differentiate yourself from the next person. Your goals should be tied to a personal experience that you have, a personal quote unquote wrong that you saw in the world that you want to solve, that you want to be a part of the solution for. So that's where you become authentic, personal, and different than the next person, right? In terms of your goals. Now, of course, differentiation is not just in the goals; it has to go in the other parts of the application as well, which means you have to reflect on other components of what your experiences have been so far. But in the goals, because that's the topic for today, in the goals section, authenticity, personality, personal experiences are going to be the things that make your goals different. I see a question just came in. Oh, it was just a thank you. Thank you very much for being here and being live and live with me. Whether you're watching this live now or will watch it as a replay, I just want to thank you for being part of our community. If you found this helpful, definitely share it with your network of people who are also going through this journey or are planning this journey, so they can start thinking about how they can craft their goals. And if you need support in this journey, I invite you to reach out for a consultation. Next week, we're moving into October interview season for round 1, and we're going to be talking about Wharton's team-based discussion interview preparation. I know Wharton doesn't have their session until later in the month, but you should be doing some prep work before that email comes out on the 24th. So thank you again for watching, and I look forward to our next week's discussion.